Well, thank you again for joining us today for this presentation. It's kind of a unique style. We sort of wanted to try a roundtable here so that we could demonstrate our latest edition of LinkPoint Connect, but also open it up to questions along the way. So what I'll be doing is I believe everybody on the call is muted, but as I go along and I'm showing features and functionality, I will continue to watch the questions pane in the GoToWebinar section. I will watch if you raise your hand. I think there's a button for that on your panel as well. And I'm more than happy to stop to address things, unmute you if it's easier for us to just sort of chat things through. So you'll kind of hear me along the way, just sort of stop and make sure everybody's still with me and make sure that I haven't missed anything that would help you understand Cloud Edition better. So like I said, I'm Jill McConaughey. I'm the marketing manager here at LinkPoint 360. I also have our account executives on the line in case there are any other questions that they can help address. And we're pretty excited to share with you a look at Cloud Edition. This is one of our newer editions, and I like to start by sort of helping to distinguish how it works, how it's different than our desktop edition. That way, as we get sort of into how the sync tools work, everyone's sort of familiar with what's there, what's not there, what's available, and how you can best leverage this version of the software. So if you have been a LinkPoint 360 customer, if you've been to our site, been to the App Exchange, I'm sure you've seen we have a product that looks roughly like this. So we have our side panel here. When you click to record emails, we have a bunch of buttons. This product is a PC-only installation. So what you get is, because you're installing locally, you get a lot of bells and whistles visually. You get a lot of things you get to interact with, but all the interaction, for the most part with email, is a little more manual. You get to be selective. You get to pick how and where things go on-off. When we decided we needed to make a solution that would support non-PC users or cross-platform users or people who wanted to automatically record emails, we realized that it would probably make more sense to take a different approach. So we've actually developed Cloud Edition as a server-side integration tool. So this is actually Cloud Edition here you see on my screen with the big LinkPoint Connect logo in the top left. The way Cloud Edition works is it's browser-based access to your sync settings. So that's the first distinction. The second is there's absolutely nothing to install. So the plus side of that is absolutely nothing to install from a software management perspective. From a UI perspective, it's a different feel than the desktop edition, right? Because you will not see the side panel in this version of Cloud Edition. You won't see the record window, but we've come up with several pretty unique workarounds for that to still cater to the needs that those items addressed. The third piece is, since you're working in a web browser initially to configure your sync settings, because we're not trying to install anything locally, what we end up with is you can work from any device where you have access to your Salesforce or your Exchange account. It doesn't matter if you're on an Android tablet or on an iPhone, on a Mac. If you're on a PC, it'll still work. Anywhere where you have access to those accounts, where you're updating a record, where you're adding a new contact, where you're sending an email from. We'll see those interactions on a server level, and then we're going to move those items exactly how you want based on how you configure your sync. So up front, that's the distinction. The desktop edition has sort of a UI and installation component, PC only. Cloud Edition, server-side integration, no UI to speak of yet, but sort of set it, forget it, it runs, and it captures interactions across devices. So I'll stop there for just a second, make sure everyone's with me. There aren't any questions about, at a high level, how we're distinguishing the two editions from one another. Great, looks like everybody's still with me. Thank you, Mark. It's always helpful when I know people are still hanging in there while I'm talking, so appreciate that one. Okay, so let's just jump right into it. This is Cloud Edition. Now, every user, when they start with Cloud Edition, whether you're an admin or an end user, is going to go through a 2-minute or less setup process. System gives you an email, you click a link, you come to Cloud Edition. You create a password so you can get back in here later, and then you have to connect to your Salesforce and your Exchange accounts. So all you do is enter your credentials for both of those. However you access Salesforce now, we use the OAuth connection, and you're in. however you're logging into Exchange. Username and password, you're in. What you're seeing in this view is my test user, Sally, and she's actually already done that step. And we have documentation I can share if you want to see what that step or that wizard looks like. But in this case, she's already connected. And I know that because down here where it says hosts, you can see she's got a ready status on both. She's up and running. She's ready to go. Out of the box, all the sync jobs are off, so you can connect and get ready, but nothing will run until you tell it to. The only time that happens differently is if you are an admin, you come in, you pre-configure the whole thing, you turn things on for your users, those users will start running their sync rules after they connect because you already set it for them. Another thing I like to point out, and we can go into this if anyone has any question or need for this, at the top you see this navigation. I've got organization, subscription, profiles. This is the admin view. So Sally's actually the admin for this account. End users will only see the My Settings. What these other levels do is they give admins the ability to completely customize how the users in their group use the tool. You can pre-configure different groups of people with different sync rules. You can lock certain things. Maybe you don't want anyone in your whole company syncing contacts because that's a little scary sometimes. You can completely disable and hide that. You can lock settings, you can force settings, or you could absolutely not touch any of this, and every user you have come on can set it how you'd like. So again, tons of flexibility. I could show that if someone is interested, but where the bulk of the tool is going to be is actually in those sync jobs. So I'm actually on the My Settings page, and again, I'm an admin, but this is what everyone who comes in as a user will see. User details on the top, you make sure you're connected. Down here is where we're going to hang out the most. So these are your sync jobs. I'll start with email because I think that's usually the biggest spot that people come to us saying, hey, your desktop tool, totally cool. You can record emails one-off. I can relate them certain ways. But is there any way to automate this? I just want all my emails to just start recording to Salesforce for me or for my team. Maybe I can't get my team to cooperate and actually record their emails. So I'll show you what that looks like. And it's actually fairly simplified. So this is how you configure your email sync. It's off by default, and we narrowed it down to 2 options for you. So it's super simple. You can sync all of the emails or only some of the emails when you flag them. And I know I'm paraphrasing the 2 modes, but the way the email sync works is we're essentially looking at the senders and recipients on each email. Then we're looking in Salesforce to see if there's a matching record with the same email address. So if I'm emailing with Fred, I'm checking for that email address to see if Fred's in Salesforce. In this mode, attempt to sync everything. If Fred's in Salesforce and I email him, it's automatically going to record. And if I email Fred back and forth 10 times in one day, all 10 emails are going to record. So we're capturing all of those interactions. The other way to do it is to say, I only want to selectively sync emails. So this is a little more user interaction because you have to tell the system which emails to sync. So in this case, you can designate an email 2 different ways. Category in Exchange in Outlook and call it CRM and apply it to the emails you want our system to pick up. So Fred emails me 10 times and the last one has all the info. I can tag that one email and the system will see that tag, pick it up and sync it the next time the sync runs. Another way we can do that is with a smart address, which I'm actually going to talk about a little more detail in a minute, but we do give you 2 ways to designate emails. Let's leave it on designate mode for a minute. The rest of the screen, even simpler. So we have sync frequency. You pick the days of the week that you're syncing. Maybe I'm not working Saturday, so I'll uncheck that. Maybe my work, I get to leave today at 5. That's pretty straightforward. Admins can lock all of these features again as a reminder if you set them at a higher level in the system. And the last bit here for folder, I always recommend people just sort of leave it the way it is. When you leave it as inbox and sent, we're monitoring all your inbound and your outbound communication. If you want us to look in just one folder, we'll pull in your folders for you. So maybe I only want the junk mail folder and I could remove these 2. And we would only do emails you put in that folder. It gets a little sticky sometimes, so I think especially when you come on board for a trial, leave the setting the way it comes out of the box, get a feel for the tool, then decide if you really want to get into foldering your email. The goal is to keep it as simple as possible, but we made the option available if you already have an existing workflow. That's how you configure the email sync. It's that simple. This piece takes care of, all you have to do is hit save. This piece of the sync for email takes care of all of the Salesforce who records. So we're going to look at the leads, we're going to look at the contacts, the person accounts even, and we're going to automatically pick up those interactions. Now this is designate mode, is the one I'll demonstrate today, but it would automatically work for that as well. Let me pause and see if there are any questions, if anyone wants to chime in about the email sync before I get on to how we handle the Salesforce what records. All right, I see everybody's still with me. I don't see any questions. I'll keep going. I'll stop if I see anything else pop up. That's great. So again, I'll close that window. And what you're going to see is the sync ends up getting queued up to run. And it'll run at the frequency we've set, which I think I left at the 30-minute default. So that's great. Let's talk about Salesforce what records. If you have an email from someone and you need that email to go to an opportunity or an account or a custom object, how would you do that with our tool? Well, there's no UI, so you're not going to be able to go in and open record windows and do it that way, which our desktop users are used to. So how would you do that from any device super easily with like 1 or 2 clicks max? And our answer was Smart Address. So Smart Address is something that we've built that lets you pick the objects you want to work with. I believe accounts and opportunities are on out of the box. You can shut them off before you turn it on if you don't use them. You pick your objects, then you turn it on. What we do is we actually create a list of smart addresses or contacts for you in Exchange. And I will show you what this looks like. And again, I'm demoing off of a PC, but it looks the same on a Mac. And we have this list here of smart addresses. And the smart addresses are a unique email address for every single instance of each object that meets certain criteria. Sounds a little nested. It's actually less complicated than I'm making it sound. So for example, this is all of the accounts that on my recently viewed table in Salesforce. So ABC, this one, there's another one. We're pulling in the most recently used because if you own 4,000 accounts, you do not want 4,000 smart addresses. That's absolutely going to be too bulky to work with. These are most likely the most active ones or your current ones or things you have pipeline for. So we're generating an account list. Opportunities, same thing. So this is pulling in all my most recently viewed opportunities. So we're working on a Dreamforce 17 demo, or I'm trying to sell licenses. Again, this is stuff I've already got going. Now I believe with opportunities, we also filter so that you also only see the open ones, because once it's closed, you don't need it anymore. We help kind of keep it tidy. Our Smart Address Sync maintains this list for you. So as you close deals, as you stop working with this account and you start working with more and more accounts, sort of as your pipeline sort of rolls over, we're going to maintain it. So as your most recently viewed tables change, the older ones will automatically fall off of this list, and all the new ones will automatically come on this list. So we will refresh it for you. Now, how do you use it? So when you're creating an email, let's make that a little smaller. There we go. And you're addressing it to someone. Of course, my autocomplete's not working because I've been demoing too much today. So you address the email to someone, and you know that this person is in your Salesforce. So there's a matching record. If we were in sync all email mode, that would be the only thing I'd have to do. I would just, create the email, send it, the system would pick it up. In designate mode, you have to put an extra something on it, and that something can be a smart address. And I've been demoing, so I don't have them in my history, but what we would do is there's a smart address book, we're pulling from there, and we can BCC these little smart tags. So here I know I want this to go onto the ABC company account because I know Fred had something to do with it. And when this email records, that's where I want it to go. If I don't really want it to go to an account or an opportunity, I just want this to record. Let's see if I can put a smart record tag. And the smart record tag actually says one-off, pick this email up, record this email to Fred. This is the one of the 5 Fred emails I got today that I want, and it lets you selectively send. So these sort of work as ways that you can, let me see if I can get something else running real quick on another screen. This is a way that you can opt emails in a designate mode, one off, and if you have it already running to pick up everything, it'll just work. What I'm trying to bring up real quick, if you give me 1 second, is I can actually show you what this looks like on an iPad, because Smart Address is useful. It's even more useful when you're looking at it from a mobile device. So let's get this turned on. Great. Hopefully that's working. There's my iPad. And you can see actually I already had one filled out. But essentially when you're in the field, let's clear that. Let's start fresh. And I just want to send an email and I'm with Fred. And now I know that this is for maybe my Dreamforce opportunity. I start typing Dreamforce and the smart addresses pop up automatically. So it's even simpler if you're on your phone or you're out in the field. You don't have to worry about trying to look up an address book. Super seamless. From wherever you send this from, the smart addresses are going to record to the what records. And I see a question, so let me take 1 second. Great question. Okay, so in everything mode or sync all, will the system automatically sync to an opportunity? It will not. So remember, if the modes, let me pull that back up. Let me move the iPad. The modes that you're configuring under email are going to take you to the Salesforce Who records. So you'll automatically record to Fred. You won't automatically record to the op. The reason why, we can see Fred, we can see his email address, but we can't 100% know that he belongs to my Dreamforce op. He may belong to 3 different ops, or he may be tied to two accounts because he's a partner. So we're not going to automatically make the association to an opportunity or another what record for you. That's where the category or that's where the smart address would come in. So if you're in all mode and you want an email to go to an opportunity, I don't have them auto-populating on here, they usually do. You would have to go in and add your smart address. Does that help, David? Definitely, chat away if I missed something or you want me to elaborate a little bit more about it. But again, email sync native just does the who's smart address, tag to the what's. Great. Okay, good. That looks like it covered it. So let me make sure I didn't change my mode on myself here, and we'll actually sync this email. Close, and I'll do it from here. So I'm emailing my contact. I'm tagging it to a smart address, and I'm just going to send it. That's my user experience. So I know I'm jumping back and forth and showing config, but really 99.9% of the time, users are just going to work with it. They don't even have to think about it. I'm going to force the sync. Usually the sync will just run, but we're on a demo and don't want to wait 30 minutes for it to cook. And what will happen is the sync will run, we'll pick up those associations, and we'll put it in Salesforce for you. You have 2 ways of seeing what happened. And the first is to go to Salesforce, and we can actually look for Fred and look at his activity history and see the email already went. It was faster than I was. So here it is in that little past activity history. That's the one I just sent. The other way to do it is you can actually just look at the sync history. I'll only spend a couple seconds here. There's a lot on it, but in short, everything that syncs, there's that email, will be under synced. We even tell you where we know we sent it. So it went to Fred. It also went to that opportunity. Green checks for both means we matched, took care of it. If you wanted a shortcut, when you click this, I believe it just takes you right to that item in the activity history that we searched for before. And there you have it. Everything that we sent, if I had actually put content in the email, it would be here. If you didn't have a match or you had excluded this for some reason, because there's a lot of rules you can use to exclude, which we can get into with each of you as you start to test, we would just show you that. So that's the rest of these tabs. But sync history really shows you everything that's working, some of the things you decided not to send, and that's email sync. So I'll take a second and check and see if there are any other questions about email sync, which is always the most long-winded because it's sort of the first introduction. But really, you just set your settings, pick your objects, turn it on, and go back to working and sending emails. And oh, there's a question, perfect. What happens if an email address does not exist in Salesforce? Are you prompted to enter it? Excellent question. So and let's see if I can think on the fly and make one up. I will do it this way. So let's show that. So you're not prompted in the middle of sending, right? So if I'm going to email Jeff because I'm pretty sure that he's not in Sally's Salesforce. And this will be an email to someone not in Salesforce, if I could spell right. Okay. And I'm in designate mode, so I'm going to designate it. This would usually be in my history, but I just rebooted it. Perfect. So let's test that. Here's an email I'm sending to Jeff, who's not in Sally's Salesforce that I'm aware of, and we're saying to the system, record this, okay? So I'm going to send it. I'm going to force the sync in a second here. And what happens is there's nowhere to put that email, right? Jeff does not exist in Sally's Salesforce account, so there's no way for us to place that on Jeff's record. But what we will do, if I did that right on the fly, is we will actually log that for you in the sync history. It may take a minute. I might have been too fast, or Jeff might actually be in there and it won't work, but there it goes. So you see we have this unresolved tab. There we go. So what happens is, as you're sending emails back and forth, maybe you're not creating your contacts, or maybe you just met a guy and he's a brand new lead and you haven't had a chance to create that, but you emailed him because you had to write back to him. So what happens is we have this unresolved tab here that tells you up front the items we could not sync because there was nowhere to put them. So in this case, it's saying, I send an email to someone not in Salesforce, titled that. We even tell you which addresses are here. So I know Sally is me, and Jeff is Jeff, and Jeff's probably the one that I meant to have this go to, but I didn't create it yet. So you have a couple options. If Jeff's a spammer, you can choose to ignore his address and get rid of it off the list. Ignore his whole domain if you don't want to hear from him ever again. But we probably want to create the record. So what we will do is we will actually click one of these icons and help you create that record yourself. Once you do that, the email will sync. Now I see some follow-up questions in the panel, so I'll try to swing back and forth here. 1 second. Lots of questions. Give me 1 second. The window's moving on me. There we go. Okay. So that's how we handle unresolved. So it's pretty easy to clean this up, find the reason why an email didn't go. I believe if you click this, it just launches that screen. So it's your create a new contact screen in Salesforce, and you can go about your business. Now, to answer that follow-up question that I see in here, oh, no, excuse me. Okay, so Mark, let me know if that answered your question about smart address, about the email addresses not existing, excuse me. The next question in here, it looks like, is when you're on, I broke lightning. There we go. When you're on a PC and using the standard, that's a great question. Okay, let me get back to Dave because I see Mark has a follow-up. Let me switch back real quick. So when we're talking about that unresolved, is there anything that tells you there's something unresolved? Okay, currently, no. So right now, the user would have to log into our little web portal, pop into their email sync history, and check this tab. There is an item on the roadmap which will give folks sort of like a daily sync report and say, hey, Mark, you synced 50 emails today and 4 of them are unresolved. Here's a link. You should probably come in here and fix that. But currently there's nothing that triggers that, but we wanted to make sure that we put something on the roadmap to cover it. Now let me jump back, because this is an excellent question, different topic. If you're currently using the desktop version of our software, which looks like this, and you want to use Cloud Edition with it, the question is, does the desktop version, and David, tell me if I'm reading this wrong, but does the desktop version know not to record an email if you have Cloud version on? That's an excellent question. And the simple answer is no. They operate as 2 separate entities. So if you decide, and you can decide, to use both editions, and the reason or the use case is usually, well, I want to use all this automated syncing. I want to have everything just sort of run, but I'm going to miss the side panel. I really want my side panel. I don't want to lose it. The recommendation we make to folks is check your current desktop Connect settings. Step 1, if you're going to use calendar, contact, or task sync, shut them off here. We have an interface for that in LinkPoint Assist. Make sure they're off. I believe if you have like a custom installer or you've pushed it out already to a bunch of people, we have ways of actually going in and disabling that for you or with you with our pro services team. So that took care of calendar, contacts, and tasks. The other aspect is email, because you'll see these buttons are here because I have desktop edition installed. There's nothing automatic to stop you from using that. So a best practice, easier said than done, would be to say, well, if you know you have email sync turned on, then just don't click these buttons, because to your point, there is no dupe checker. So if I have email sync all on, this email from Fred will absolutely sync. And if I come in here and use desktop and I click this and I do it again, it will sync twice and you will have doubles of emails. I believe we're able to customize some of these buttons and remove them. It's all possible. There may be extra fees. There's some pro services stuff in there, but we're willing to work with you if you would like to try to use them together. That would give you a side panel with one edition and all the bells and whistles with the other edition. Give me 1 second to check the questions because they're pouring in. And David, let me know if that didn't answer your question. Let me just take 1 second to read this. Greg, I'm not sure if I understand your question 100%. Let me start to puzzle through it, and then if I'm not right, I can also unmute you if that's easier. But you're asking if you have a user on multiple accounts. So is it user? In fact, Greg, if you don't mind, let me just unmute you. It might just be easier. Hang on. Let me do this. Let's just talk it through. Oh, I see. Okay, I'll unmute you anyway. Greg, you're live, possibly. But you're talking about a contact on multiple accounts or duplicate contacts?
Yeah, like a contact or a lead. Like like worst case scenario, if it's like a duplicate, but on some of our accounts we have it where they can have the contact is like a related on another account. So it may be the main on one, but it may be like a business end user on another account, so just so they can have visibility of it. So if that contact were to be on both accounts, or worst case scenario, like say if it's a duplicate by accident, would it record it to, like, how would the program determine which user is going to pull to, or do you have to manually choose that prior to, if you have the automatic sync going on?
Yeah, so if the contact, so here's Fred, right? And if he exists one time and he's got like 900 different related tables tied to him, we're going to record the email to just this one instance of Fred. So that answers it one way. If you have 5 records for the same Fred and they all have the same email address here for whatever reason, and some companies do that, I believe, but I will double check, that we record the email to every instance wherein we find this match, because we aren't able, with the automatic recording with Cloud Edition, we're not able to figure out, maybe you have one Fred with this email on this account, one Fred with this email on an ABC named account, we're not going to be able to know which Fred is the one you mean to record this one to this time. So I believe it will put the email in on every instance of Fred. Or that.
Okay. All right.
Okay. I'll mute you again in case we have background noise, but I'm glad we were able to figure that one out. Let me just check real quick, make sure I got everybody's questions so far and that we were all set, and I think I am. I will keep an eye on that, but I will keep going. All right, we've got email syncing. How do we do calendars? This screen is going to look a lot like the last one. Off by default, don't sync per calendar. Choose your on mode. On mode number 1, sync everything on my calendar. Everything in Outlook, or excuse me, in Exchange, everything in Salesforce. You're going to have copies of the same calendar. You can work wherever you want. We're going to maintain it. The other two are a little more refined. Maybe I only want items that I relate or that have a matching record. So if I am emailing Fred and I know he's in Salesforce, or excuse me, if I'm sending Fred a calendar invitation and I know Fred's in my Salesforce, that one will get picked up. If I'm inviting Jeff to an appointment and I know he's not in Salesforce because we had unresolved emails and I have been lazy and I have not created that lead, that one will not go. So we can match, we can record calendar items with matches. You can get even more refined and do the same thing you can do with email. So you can choose to sync your calendar only when you put a category of CRM on that item, or you can address a calendar item to a smart address. So if you were sending Fred an invite for a call at 2 o'clock on Tuesday, you could put in the to field Fred, and you could also put a smart address for an opportunity, and we'll pick that up and we will relate it to everyone that has a relationship there. The rest of the screen should look pretty similar to email. So again, you can pick the days of the week you want your calendar syncing. I can customize it how I want. This is a little neat. You can actually set it to kind of go, maybe I always want up to 30 days into the future, synced, ready, and locked and loaded so that I'm able to schedule more accurately, or people can see what's coming up on the horizon. I have it at 0 just for testing purposes. You can also, under the past, by default, calendar sync is bidirectional. So you can put something in one place, it'll sync to the other side. If you want to prevent, maybe you maintain everything in Salesforce, you don't want things coming down to your Exchange, you can check these boxes so that you can prevent things from being created. Maybe you want to create everything in Exchange, but you don't want changes in Salesforce to overwrite what you did in Exchange. So you have a lot of control here if you want to go that far with it for preventing things from happening. Because otherwise, anywhere you create or you make a change to a meeting or you cancel and delete a meeting because it's not going to happen, we're going to update those changes and make the match in the corresponding or the other system. So those are your prevents. Your folder, if you have multiple calendars, you can pick one. It only works, it's a one-to-one matching. So if you have 4 calendars in your Outlook, you have to pick one to sync to Salesforce. That's the calendar sync. You turn it on, you pick your mode, and you let it run, and it just sort of runs. Let me see, do this. I will pause for a second and see if there's any questions. I can demo it. It basically just moves the data to Salesforce, so there's a little less to show. The other thing is you do get that sync history, and I may have things in there already to show you. A couple, okay. Calendar sync history for your calendar looks the same as it did for email. So as those meetings are sort of syncing back and forth, we're giving you that history. Depends on your mode if you'll have anything unresolved. You can click through, you can see the event in Salesforce. Once it loads, I probably deleted it, but you can kind of see how it's working. So I'll stop for a second and see if there's any questions on calendar sync. I know that one went quicker than email, but I think once you get one, the rest of the screens start to very quickly look the same and make sense. Okay, we'll keep going. Task sync, even quicker than the other two. The screen looks almost identical to Calendar, which is great. If you don't want them to sync, you don't have to turn it on. You can sync all of your tasks. So again, if you maintain a task list in Salesforce, or you have team members assigning you things there, turning this on will bring the Salesforce items down to Exchange. So you always know what you're supposed to do from wherever you are. If you're using the tasks in Outlook or in Exchange locally and you need those to get up into Salesforce so they can report on them, choose the all mode. Everything will be in both spots and you'll never not have your to-do list. Designate mode. There's no smart address for tasks because you don't really send them to people. They're just for you to do. So we have designate mode gives a CRM category to the item in Exchange. You can one-off select things on your to-do list in Exchange that you want to kick back up to Salesforce. Private items, I should have mentioned this for Calendar as well. Calendar and task, if you make something private, it will not sync. So again, doctor's appointments, those sorts of things that you kind of need to put on there so people don't plan a meeting with you, but that you set to private because it's not their business where you're going, those totally won't sync. So again, private items don't sync. Task sync, prevent operations, same thing. You can say do or do not create, update, or delete a task in either system based on how your workflow is. So if you start deleting items out of Exchange and you definitely don't want them deleted out of Salesforce, you probably want to pick that option. It gives you control, again, on how the system works. Not selecting these, you'll always, and you have all, you'll always have both be a mirror of one another. Designate gives you more control. There are folders for tasks. I only have one, but if you have another folder, you can work with that one. And with that, you are now syncing your tasks. Are there any questions about task sync? There is no sync history screen for tasks currently, sort of because they're a little more straightforward than the other two. I believe there's something on the roadmap to create that, but for now there's not. So really, once you enable it, you just work with tasks and then they sync. Just take a second and make sure that we've got everybody before I talk about contacts. Okay, good. We've still got everybody with us. We're on to the final sync, contact sync. So let's take a look at that screen. Super simple. It's on or off. It's off by default. When you turn it on, there's actually a description here of what we're actually going to sync down for you. So by default, we will sync from Salesforce to Exchange, down one way to start, all of the contacts you own in Salesforce. So that gets them down to Exchange, which means they'll be available on your phone, on your iPad, on your PC, your Mac, wherever. So then you don't have to go back in and try to find contacts so that you can then go back and email them. You can set the sync range. You can set your prevents. Interesting for contact, we check the prevent delete option for contacts for both. And the reason for that is if something funny happens or you're working on your phone and you delete Fred from your phone, you probably don't want to delete Fred the contact from your Salesforce because he's a contact on an account. So doing things like this, where we check that box, prevents that from happening. I will stop because we got a question here. What about shared contacts? Good question. In some cases, there may be two salesmen working with the same contact. I'm slightly less familiar with shared. I do know I can say we look at the owner fields. So if two people own, then both people will get a copy of Fred back down in their Exchange. Maybe, Mark, if there's a little more to it, if you want, ping me and I can unmute you if you want to discuss it, but that might be something that we might want to actually test in a sandbox before I answer this incorrectly. But it does look at the owner of that contact. If 500 people are working with it and there's only one owner, and I own it, then I'm the only one who will have that come down to Exchange. You can set your days and your range, but that's the sync settings. Now, how does it work? Where do they go? And before I turn it on, I'll actually show you where they go. So we end up with a folder that LinkPoint Cloud Edition creates called SF Salesforce contact sync. Mine is empty because I have not turned it on. What we do is we make this folder, we run the sync, and for the Exchange side, this will populate with all the contacts that hit that criteria. When you're on your phone or your iPad, I believe, let me just confirm, there we go, they come down into your contacts. So I've actually got some smart addresses in here that you can see. I've also got myself. Lisa is actually a contact. I've got Kara here. If I scroll, I think, yep, there's Fred. So it's bringing them down locally into your contacts on your device. And this is an iPad, iPhone, etc. Works the same way. 365, I believe you see this folder, and you can kind of keep them a little more separate. Now what I do, and I was playing with this earlier, so let's see if I've set this up the way I needed to. I turn it on, and I run the sync. And what will happen as the sync processes is that this folder will populate with everything from Salesforce down to Exchange. Now, how do you get items to go from Exchange back up to Salesforce? You can absolutely put items into this folder. The issue, let me see, I think I have a root setting. The issue is going to be that if you create a brand new contact and you have them in Exchange and you want to send that contact back up to Salesforce, we can do that. So we can actually send that information up. The thing that we can't do is tie it to the right account because we don't have enough information to know where that should go. So your contacts you add to this folder from Exchange, brand new up to Salesforce, are actually going to come in as, I believe, private contacts. And I'll let that kind of sink in for a second. And you can go find them. I mean, they'll be in Salesforce. You'll be able to locate them. There we go. My sync is running. Okay. You'll find them in Salesforce, and you can tie them or relate them to those accounts. But off the bat, anything you add manually to this folder, it's not going to match to an account because there's no way for us to do that. And you can see my sync finally ran. I had a setting wrong behind the scenes. But you can see we populated now. So everything I had as Sally in Salesforce is now local, which means it's on my phone, which means it's on my iPad. That's the contact sync. Can you create a contact in this folder? Absolutely. And that's sort of to that point where I said that we can kind of go in here and call this like the new guy. And maybe we kind of do like new guy at LinkPoint. This will bounce, but you get the idea. You can totally save this. The next time it syncs, this one will go up to Salesforce. But again, we can't tie this to any other records in Salesforce. So you'll have to go to Salesforce one day and decide if new guy here belongs to an account and make that relationship yourself. But it will sync. Anything you put in here will go. See if there are any other questions. Mark, if that didn't answer your question. Give it a second here. That's good. That's great. That's great. That's good. All right. The last little bell and whistle I'll show, and then we'll just kind of leave it to questions, is we have an ignore list. And I kind of like to talk about this a little because there's a lot of conversation. Well, the tool will automatically sync a lot of things. How do I make it not sync things? And I kind of alluded before, well, first, calendars and tasks that are private don't sync. Nothing you have to do other than make them private. We talked a little about the CRM category. Well, you can actually put a do not sync category on items, and that will one-off exclude them too. Kind of less of a thing to show, but I could do it. Let's go in, see my email. Maybe this email right here is private. I don't want the system to pick it up. So I'm literally just going to add this do not sync category. The system would have matched it because Fred's in there, but I don't want to because this one has a secret in it and I don't want anyone to see it. Another way to exclude, let's actually do this. You can even exclude things, and I'll pull it up and then I'll explain it. So 2 seconds here. Remember before we were putting smart record, it looked like this to put things in to make it sync. You can actually prevent by saying do not record. This would probably go because he's a match, but this one doesn't really need to be in there. There's nothing relevant. It's just about how the World Series went. That doesn't have to go. So you can one-off exclude. And I see Mark's question, and that's perfect segue. The other way that you can exclude is to maintain an ignore list. As an admin, you can create one for the whole company. You can create different ones for different profiles, and users can also do this. So this is great for internal emails. So one thing that our test user here, Sally, could do is actually do this. She works at LinkPoint with me. There's absolutely no reason why her emails to me, to Jeff, to Tom need to be recorded. We're probably just talking about things that have nothing to do with other account related things. There's no reason to record them. I click save, and what that will do is it's actually going to maintain a list of domains, or we could do that example. Not good on the fly. Single people, maybe I just don't like Bob and I don't want his emails to record. So I can one-off maintain this. If your company has a larger list of generally excluded addresses or multiple domains, you can enter multiple things on a line. I know those weren't domains, but you can see you can put in as many entries as you want, and we'll pick them all up in a batch, and we can bulk exclude with our ignore list. So this is really good for internal communications, for sort of batch cleanups, spam domains, junk domains, scary domains. It kind of gives you a spot to filter them out up front so that those items, A, don't end up in Salesforce if there's a match, or B, end up on that email sync history screen I showed before with the unresolved, and you know they're unresolved because you don't care about those domains. Clean them up here, they'll never. Again, another flexible way to do it. Now, I know I've talked for a long time, and I appreciate everybody's time. The great thing I think about this is it has a lot of flexibility, has a lot of bells and whistles. So I talked a lot about each individual one. The great news is, as you come in here and get ready to test or set up a team, all you have to do is pick the option or 2 or 3 that fit you and your organization the best, click and set them and turn them on, and log out of this. Unless you need to make a tweak or add a user, you don't have to come back here. So as far as usability, it's super simple. I know I made it maybe look a little more complicated. It's just got a lot of options, but overall, the experience is you kind of come in, you configure it, and then you go do your work. So hopefully that came across as I went through lots and lots of options to try to show you it can fit all the different use cases. I will see if there's any more questions. I'm happy to answer them. I see one already, so let me see if I can answer it. Will it be necessary to subscribe? I see. Okay, so you're asking, do I have to have both versions? We have different customers doing different things. So some customers come on brand new. They're a team of iPhone people. They're going to go with your cloud edition. We have folks who use the PC version, perfectly happy. They stay put with that. You can choose to use both together. So if you want to keep your side panel, but use the cloud version to sync, you can. If you don't want to keep the desktop version, maybe you like the side panel, but you think that this will cover 99% of your use cases, you can switch. You don't have to switch everyone. If you've got a team of PC people and you want to add Mac people, you can have a split account. We have a pretty cool group of people here who work to try to figure out the best way to make it work for your team. So I know our account reps are on the line too. So I know that they're paying attention to how you need to use the tool, what your use case is, and they can come up with a suggestion or a quote for the best way to balance your licenses and really to meet that end user need for you. So David, that doesn't answer your question. I'm happy to talk about it more. I know your rep can certainly reach out and probably explain it better than me. Okay, follow up on that. Most of the time I work off of a PC. However, I have a Mac at home where I need the convenience. Then in that case, David, high level, you would probably, well, it depends. David, if you wanted to keep the side panel piece at work, and then go home and have everything syncing from the Mac, then that would require 2 editions. But at the same time, if you think that the cloud edition can meet 99.9% of your needs and you'll miss the side panel, but you can work without it, then you could probably switch to cloud. And Dave, I think the best way would be to have your rep chat with you a tiny bit more, just to make sure that I'm speaking the most accurately about that and that they make the best recommendation as well. There's no requirement to buy both or one or the other. It's just going to be what's best for your workflow need. And David, yes, definitely looking forward to bring you on for a trial. Glad you seem interested in trying the version. And David, I will also make sure that your rep reaches out to you as well to kind of narrow down the best approach for you having 2 computers with 2 platforms. We'll make sure that you get all the answers you need. I'll wait just a second. I see everything seems to be wrapping up. I'll give it just another second in case anyone has any other questions. But if you think of a question later, absolutely reach out to us. You can reach out to your account rep. If you don't know who that is, you can email sales@linkpoint360.com. You'll get me. I'll find your rep. We have a pretty extensive online knowledge base. So if you go to our knowledge base and look for the cloud edition, you can find lots and lots of articles, lots of screenshots that look like this in case you want a refresher on something. And your reps can definitely share that link with you as well. Probably wrap up here. I appreciate everybody's time. The questions were great. Hopefully this was helpful to you as you look at all the different editions that we offer. And I'm sure that your account reps will be in touch. Have a great rest of your day and appreciate everyone spending the hour with me.